Picture this. The journey ahead starts here together, and together we can build a brighter future. You are listening to Illuminating Hope, a podcast of Hope House. Marianne, it's great to sit here and talk to you about prevention, a paradigm shift. One thing Hope House has always done is prevention work. And what we've done in years past, when a survivor comes in, and we start on that prevention piece right away, but we're looking at some different methods of prevention, and that's being more proactive with prevention. Today, we want to talk about the different services that Hope House is offering now for their domestic violence prevention. Can you tell me what that stems from or where you got the idea for our community partnership program?
As you said, we've always done prevention, and we've done it in various ways throughout the years. So we've tried different things. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. It wasn't as effective as we had hoped it would be. Funding has always been somewhat of a challenge for us, so I would see that some of our programming would ebb and flow based on that. We've always recognized that domestic violence is a learned behavior and that it's cyclical and that it often runs in families and generations. So we know that it's also a very misunderstood crime that happens. I think just the fact that it's a crime, a lot of people don't necessarily think about that when they're thinking about domestic violence. So we've always just tried to look at it as how can we best get the message out to people who need it. So the people who need the message are obviously those people who are experiencing domestic violence, but it's also really important that we get to have conversation with people who are interacting with people who are survivors, but also how we can prevent generations coming up from repeating that cycle. So for me, really when looking at what have we accomplished through our programming, we have done so much, and this was one of the areas that I really felt like it's time that we put a lot of energy and effort into. How can we bring an end to this within our community? I know that's probably not going to happen in my lifetime, but it's really important that we change the conversation and that we look at it from absolutely needing to provide the services for those people who are in it right now. We absolutely will always be that, but I would love to be able to end it and not have people coming to us anymore, and that we could actually someday close our doors because we weren't needed. That's a nice lofty goal.
That's a nice lofty goal for sure. I would love to work us all out of a job actually in
Absolutely.
Domestic violence for sure.
Yeah.
So going back to something that you said, and that is when we're out in the community, people do ask, I have a daughter, or I know a friend who is in a domestic violent relationship, how can I help? And I know our hotline calls are often informational. It's not always emergency shelter needed. It's
Correct.
Sometimes a lot of our calls are our moms saying, hey, my teenage daughter is dating somebody who is not treating her well at all, and I don't know what to do about it. What kind of programs do you think that we should embark on as far as educating our youth and also people who are concerned with their adult children or with their children?
That's where it has to be kind of an all-encompassing. There isn't one strategy that's going to work, and we know that. We know that there's not one strategy that works for survivors. Well, that's why we have this plethora of services that we offer, because we know that people have different needs based on where they are in their life and based on the things that they're experiencing. And I believe that when we do this educational piece, that has to be the same thought process, that we can't just assume that if we talk to this group of people, then that everybody that needs to know about domestic violence knows about it. Because it impacts all of us, then that means that our outreach has to be to all of us. So we have to look at, from young children up to however old we want to go, that it takes us all. And I have always been a firm believer, and I say all the time that we as society have to take responsibility for this, and we are the ones that can stop this. Yes, we need to target children, and yes, we need to do that with the different age groups, and what we say to kids in elementary school is going to be very different than what we say to high school or college age young adults, or what we say to people who have children and they're needing some guidance. We have to tailor the message to fit the audience, but we need to make sure that our audience is inclusive of all of those people.
I 100% agree. When we tailor different presentations to audiences, and I do a lot of that here at Hope House, we can't go in talking to a fourth grade and delve right into what is domestic violence. We do have to have different angles. That angle often is, what does a healthy relationship look like? Maybe it's teaching the youth of today how to be leaders. And that's something that we're working on at the I Am a Leader program. What is social responsibility? What is your responsibility to your community? Because all of us have one. And I think that that could be a large piece of prevention as well. Not everyone, unfortunately, who's a fourth grader, fifth grader, sixth grader, knows what a healthy relationship looks like, because not everyone has a healthy example of what a relationship looks like. We know that 1 in 3 women are affected by domestic violence. So when you look at a stat like that, and then you think about young people, that's a lot of young people.
Just talking about when we talk to an elementary age school group and talking about healthy relationships, we're also talking about, you're not necessarily talking about romantic relationships.
Oh, no.
We're not getting into dating relationships, but we're talking about boundaries and self-esteem and how do you feel good about yourself and how do you set boundaries so that no one is taking advantage of you, or that you can have a say in what people around you, how they're impacting you or what they're doing to you and how you're receiving that. That goes a long way when you become older and you are going to start going into dating relationships, that if you have a very positive sense of self and you have good boundaries, then you're going to hopefully be better equipped to deal with something that may be coming at you that doesn't feel right, because you could say, you know what, I feel strong about myself and I feel good about myself and I don't deserve this. That's going to be easier for someone to do when they have a healthy sense of self-esteem and good boundaries and have people around them who they feel that they can go talk to. They have support. If we can arm people with that and engage people in that way, no matter what age they are, I think we're going to have a better opportunity just to really talk about how to intervene if and when that time comes that somebody gets into a relationship that doesn't feel right to them.
One thing that we do like to talk about, especially when we're talking about the younger age group, is healthy friendships, is what we call the presentation. Because it doesn't matter who it is, any friend, it can be anyone, any sex of any friend, that should be treating you fairly and justly and respectfully,
right.
Period.
Right. So I think sometimes when we're talking to those younger kids, bullying is a word that's used a lot right now that people are talking about. And a lot of those same kind of dynamics are happening with that at that age group that you would see in someone who's older and more of a dating or romantic relationship. There's some crossover there. So I think when you're talking, again, that's where we tailor our conversation to the group that we're talking to, and we're using words and terms and situations that make sense for that age group or for that group of people, that it makes sense to talk about healthy friendships when you're in fourth grade can be then carried through, and then when you're in high school or college and when you're doing the dating, you can carry through some of those same dynamics as well.
Another subject that we do embark on often, especially when I'm talking to teens, is tech boundaries. I was talking to somebody today, actually. We were talking about how there are young people today that never knew life before social media and never knew life before having to make tech boundaries or have cyberbullying and all of that stuff. I am 53. I grew up way before. I'm so thankful being a Gen Xer that nobody really knows what I did in my childhood because it's not online. But today, people are in a different situation. And so I think it's really important when we train our young leaders and we talk about prevention, we need to bring that tech piece into it.
I'm older than you, so it's also just interesting to me because I have been here for a very long time. I've been at Hope House for 32 years. Things have changed so dramatically in 32 years. When we were safety planning with people and talking about red flags and talking about dynamics of relationships, when I first started, we were not talking about anything social media, tech, because we didn't even have computers.
Right.
It would be like, okay, you're saving the messages that are being left on your answering machine on your landline. You know, people today are like, what's an answering machine and what's a landline? Things have changed dramatically, and we have to keep up with that, and we have to change with that. So our conversations definitely have changed, and we've added this whole section around technology and the abuse that can happen around computers computers and the apps. I mean, all of these apps that can be put on someone's phone or computer for masking who they are. And I mean, it can be really overwhelming too to try to keep up with all of those things as well, to make sure that we're really helping to engage people. But the other thing that happens with that constant presence is the impact that can have on a person's self-esteem and how they value themselves. I mean, we really have to pay attention to that, because we know that young kids who are vulnerable or young adults who are feeling vulnerable can take that information that's on social media, and it can be taken in, and it can become overwhelming, and it can become where people become very depressed and suicidal, and hear those horror stories about people who have taken their own lives because of the way that social media had been responding to them. So I think it is our responsibility to stay as up to date as we can on those kinds of new technologies, unfortunately, new ways of abusing people.
Let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about, what does Hope House offer for our community, our business partners, as far as the prevention piece with educational workshops? Let's delve into that piece a little bit.
Part of our decision in expanding our prevention piece was to look at our Speakers Bureau and to improve that, and to really do our training differently, and really engage our volunteers and our staff to be able to go out and talk to people. We get requests all of the time to go out and do presentations to the community, whether it be a church group or a Rotary Club or a Kiwanis Club or a Girl Scout group or whomever it is, to come out and talk with them. I think that's really important. I think the other piece of that is engaging with the business community, engaging with other groups in our community, to be able to talk to them, because they're going to be experiencing that through their workers. And so if we can help any organization or any business to be able to handle a situation that may come their way with one of their employees, I think that, again, is part of our responsibility, is to try to educate as best we can, so that if some supervisor has a person come to them, and they have black eyes and a bloody lip, and say, I need help, that person knows what to do, or knows who at least for them to call.
One thing that we like to do is go and talk and have presentations and train, because a question we're asked all the time, I should say, is, what do I do and how do I figure out how I can help an employee who actually isn't sharing with me or doesn't want to share with me? So what we come in and do is we train maybe your faculty, or if you're a college, or maybe your employees, if you're a business, or your associates, different ways of safety planning and documenting. There are a lot of things that you can do as a leader in your business or in your community that the survivor of domestic violence maybe wouldn't appreciate it until the time has come when they need the documentation and information that you have to actually, number one, to help them, because domestic violence survivors often don't even believe themselves sometimes, but it's really harmful if somebody will come to you and you don't believe them. To be able to have documentation from somebody really validate a survivor's story. And we come in and we train organizations and organizational leaders what to look for and how to document the different specific things that would help this survivor in the long run.
And I think what's really important in that is that a person feels safe. So if they feel safe and they feel confident that if they share what's going on with them, that they're going to be helped, or that there would be assistance, and it wouldn't be that they wouldn't get in trouble, or when there's this fear of losing your job. That's the key, is that employees feel safe to be able to come forward. So to be able to talk with different groups about how they can do that, how they can be a resource for their employees, I think is just very critical, because this isn't everybody's world. Domestic violence is not, and it's definitely not on everyone's agenda for the day. If you're working at a bank, or you're working someplace where this isn't common for you, then you're not expected to have all of that information. But if you can have some of the information, have the basics, and then at least know that there are people you can call for assistance, I think that's critical.
You had talked earlier, Marianne, about some of the funding challenges. So let's talk a little bit about what some of the funding challenges have been moving into 2025 when it comes to prevention.
Funding is a challenge for us on a daily basis. That's not anything new. And we continue to be creative in how we bring in the resources. But as funders are changing, which it happens, funders, they do strategic planning, and they look at their resources and they determine whether or not they're going to continue with their priorities, or they're changing their priorities. And so that is a kind of a constant for us, that we're looking at, where do we fit? Are there organizations, are there businesses, foundations, other funders that we can go to based on the services that we provide and what we do. So we're looking at that on a regular basis. One of the things that's hard, it can be really difficult to quantify prevention and the impact that you're having because we're trying to prevent something from happening. So how do you know that you're effective? So that it can be a challenge to put into an outcome of what we're going to be able to do outside of we're going to train this many people or we're going to meet with this many people, we're going to have this many people go through this program. But we can also then look at, if we go back to what you were talking about earlier, the leadership qualities. So we can go back and say this number of people went through this program and they had an increase in what they understood about leadership or domestic violence, and have different points around how we could quantify in a better way, or at least be able to share with our funders the work that we're doing and that it is having an impact. That can be difficult. The other piece that's hard is that we're a crisis agency. So we work with people who are in crisis, and it can be hard to say, I don't want money to go to that, I want it to go over here to this prevention piece. And so we really have to balance that. We have the people who are in the midst of it right now, we have to make sure that we have the resources available for them, but we also have to know that there's money over here on the other side, because if we can stop the flow of people coming through needing the services, that's the ideal. It can be a balance to try to figure out which is more important and which one would get the priority. And that really just comes down to, again, is what the funding sources priorities are. I would like to go back to the concept around the businesses and the different activities that we can do and talk about the goal of doing some engagement with the teams. And if you want to talk about what you're doing, some of the activities that people have come in to do with their team, some team building kind of activities that you've done, and then being able to introduce domestic violence education into those activities.
I would love to speak on that. When somebody contacts me and wants to do some kind of retreat or a couple-hour lunch and learn or workshop with their associates or their staff, we love to do that. We have an entire building dedicated to that in the Lee Summit campus. And I had a group of people who work with teens come in recently, and we talked a lot about different methods to teach their teens about prevention. We talked about music theory a little bit. I brought in a couple verses of a couple different songs and then questions about them. And what ended up happening was the associates were like, I never thought that this song really meant somebody was stalking them. I just thought it was a good bop. And it is. And I'm telling them not to say to their teen, this is bad music, don't listen to it. Just know what you're listening to. So we talked a lot about music theory. We talked a lot about AI deep fakes and what these teens today are dealing with. There was a teen in California. There were nude photos going around of her, and they were AI deep fakes. They were fake photos. And it just so happened right before the associates came in for this workshop, I had just read an article about that happening, and they said that it does happen. AI is a great tool, and I think it's a wonderful tool. Actually, I use it all the time, but it can be a damaging tool, just like anything on social media or on the internet. So we discussed that a little bit and how to support the teens. If some cyberbullying were happening, then they can set those tech boundaries. If they already have maybe a soft tech boundary, maybe they need to firm that tech boundary up. And then, of course, during this lunch and learn, we had a great lunch spread for the workshop. And then we also did some kind of a craft, like we did some paint pouring, so they could just relax and team build and have a good time together. Because domestic violence and prevention, it's not easy work, it's heavy work, but we also want it to be, it's not only educational, but it's also a time to team build.
I think that's what is one of the most exciting things about our program, and I want to talk about the I Am a Leader piece too, but that part is we can come to people with the activity, or they can come here and do it here, but I think it's really effective to meet with some group that when you're talking about this heavy subject of domestic violence, but also having this opportunity to do some activity that's fun, and that is that team building piece. And so doing a paint pour or making candles or painting, have this fun activity to go with that. I think you're more apt to remember the conversation and the information that was relayed to you. So if you pour a candle and it has Hope House's logo on it, and you know that it was made by you, but you also see Hope House on there, then you're like, oh yeah, I remember that conversation. We had this great time, and it was with my coworkers, and I got to do this, but then I also learned about domestic violence at the same time.
One thing we like to do as well, we have the I Am a Leader program for the tweens and teens. One thing that we did with them was around Christmas time last year is we had them pour candles for our holiday store. Our survivors benefited from what they did, and the tweens, I think it was a tween group at that time, that had the opportunity to do that. They left with a sense of purpose, like they did something really, really special, and quite frankly, they did. It's a wonderful thing to be able to fulfill that social responsibility role in a way that they maybe never thought that they could before. So, and now they learned a little bit of a trade to where if they want to pour candles and do that somewhere else, they absolutely can for gifts for people or whatever, but they all really had a great time.
So talk about what the I Am a Leader is about. It's a program that you have taken an idea that was given to you and you've turned it into a really neat series of activities. So talk about what that is.
The I'm a Leader is a great way to, number one, it's in the name, teach tweens and teens how to be a leader, have great communication skills. When something's not going right in school, the young person needs to be empowered to know that they have a voice and they can go before a school board just like anyone else respectfully. So being taught how to do that, teamwork. We had a group of teen young people come in and it was wonderful. They actually made an organizational logo for another organization, but they each had different pieces of the 11 by 17 canvases, and they had to work together as a team in order to create this logo because each one had to paint a different part of the logo on the canvas. So that was really, really fun for them to learn. They learned how to problem solve, and with this team building activity, boy, let me tell you, they learned how to problem solve pretty quickly. And we talk a lot about the role of leaders when they positively impact society and in their community. It's a great program. I cannot wait to get the program restarted first of the year and see what we can do with teens and tweens, and it's the joy of my job.
So if someone's listening or they have an idea of something that they would like to do, what's the process that someone gets to have a I Am a Leader group or have some sort of team building?
They can contact me, tjohnson@hopehouse.net. They can contact me through the community education tab on hopehouse.net. So the communication is very easy. The inquiry is very easy. We can talk further from there what the process is and when we can get something on the books and get something scheduled. We'll want to discuss whether they would want to come on our campus or if we need to travel to them, because we're absolutely fine to do either one. As far as the I Am a Leader, we can equip any leader to any youth group how to work with the I Am a Leader program. I can imagine once we get things kicked off again that we'll probably have training opportunities for leaders just like we do the Speakers Bureau, which is another program that we do.
I think that Speakers Bureau was something I would like to spend a little time with as well, because that is probably one of our largest activities that we do in terms of really getting out into the community.
Yes.
And talking. Can you talk about some of the activities that you've done and some of the requests that come in, but then also how that happens as well?
Anyone in our community can contact me and we can discuss the Speakers Bureau and the process of getting on the Speakers Bureau. It is Hope House led, but it is largely community based. What we do is we have a Speakers Bureau training, so Hope House will certify anyone to become a speaker for us. We have a follow-up training, which is a frequently asked question training, because there's a lot of time we get questions asked to us once we've done a speaking engagement or we've done a resource table or what have you. We don't have all the answers, and I definitely let people know if you don't have the answer, it's okay to tell somebody that you don't, and we can help provide answers. We have organizations, whether it would be colleges, medical schools, whether it's clubs, organizations. We even had a junior police academy contact us to come and speak about whatever they request, whether it be healthy relationships, whether it be boundaries, red flags. It may be Domestic Violence 101. It may be Hope House resources. It may be work from home violence. We have a lot of remote workers, and I'm not even sure what to look for, but I've noticed things are different. We have our panel of speakers that are trained and equipped to go out. I think we have a panel of 35 now, and we'll come out into the community to give that information and to raise that awareness piece.
We don't just shove someone into that. They have to be trained. They have to come and listen. And
no, for sure.
And we also know that public speaking is not for everyone either. It's important to even just talk about the different requests that come in. So health fairs, we do a lot of community tables where we would just have it set up as a resource that people can come in and talk to us as they feel comfortable. We do a lot of those where it can be, you're not just standing up in front of a group of people talking, you're talking more individually to people as they go from table to table or resource to where then we also, where we go and talk to a group of 5 or 10 or 100 or whomever, depending on the audience. We will do what we can to try to meet the needs of company or the place that's asking for that service. So
we always tailor our presentations to whatever audience that we are going to be speaking to. Not only train our speakers how to speak for Hope House, about our mission, but we also teach them how to present themselves speaking. So basically a communication 101 as well. Resource tables are much needed all the time. We would train speakers for that, but if you don't feel comfortable speaking, that is a perfect thing for you to do because that is more of a one-on-one. I was at a recent resource table in the Kansas City area. I probably spoke to, I believe the count was 350 people, but it was one-on-one or two-on-one maybe. And they got the resources that they needed and they moved on to the next table. But it was just so engaging and it was a great activity. It was on a college campus, so it was a lot of young people that never really knew or understood what we were and what we stood for and where we were located. Just simple things. So almost anyone can do a resource table and probably feel comfortable.
If you are listening and you want to be involved, just reach out. We can talk about how that would look for you as an individual. We know that what we do isn't for everyone. Helping in ways can be difficult and not necessarily everybody's priority, or there are things that we need that people have the skills to help us with, and we want to be able to connect with those people in a way that feels good to them and is helpful for us. So just reach out, talk to us.
I am really excited about this paradigm shift to proactive prevention, and I am even more excited that we can really get our Hope House community involved in this paradigm prevention shift.